Welcome to a special episode of Inquiring Minds, the Writing and Literacy SIG podcast. I'm Molly, your host for this episode, featuring the editors and authors of the recently published Critical Visual Methods to Advance Racial Justice in Educational Research, The Seen and Unseen. Please join me in welcoming our editors and discussion facilitators, Drs. Angela Wiseman, Marva Capello, and Jennifer Turner, as well as featured chapter authors, Drs. Reka, Barton, and Angie Zapata. We're delighted to have you join us today on Inquiring Minds as we discuss transforming educational research through visual methodologies that center racial justice and community voices. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Wiseman.
Hey, thank you so much, Molly. I'm Angela Wiseman. I'm an associate professor of literacy education at North Carolina State University. And I just want to thank the AERA Writing and Literacy SIG for having us here to talk about our book, The Critical Visual Methods to Advance Racial Justice in Educational Research, The Seen and Unseen. Our book grew out of community, collaboration, and an urgency to address how our research can and should focus on the current socio-political climate. Our book brings in the potential of visual and multimodal qualitative research methods in educational research with a focus on racially and ethnically minoritized communities. And by minoritized community, we take Pei's definition of groups that are often underrepresented, underserved, and under-resourced. So we call attention that visual images reflect and reproduce racism and colonialism, and that also visual images have the potential to explore important topics that illuminate and provide understanding. The inspiration for this project began at a conference that Marva, Jen, and I organized in April 2022, which was funded by the American Educational Research Association and hosted by the Center for Visual Literacies. Marva's the director. We brought together educational scholars, and we're really happy to have two today for the podcast. And the folks that we had in the meeting were advancing critical justice-oriented multimodal and visual work. Over 2 days, we were in dialogue about how our work could inform each other in the field. And as a result of that conference, Jen, Marva, and I decided to edit a book that would continue and extend that dialogue. So this book, Critical Visual Methods to Advance Racial Justice in Educational Research, is organized into three main sections. The first focuses on expanding race-based analytic and conceptual framework. And in this section, the scholars that contributed to it present theories and frameworks that support our understanding of visual methods that related to racial justice in educational research. We have some amazing scholars throughout the whole book. In this section, we have contributions from Tisha Lewis-Ellison, Jennifer Esposito, Autumn Griffin, Renee Robinson Griffin, Roberta Price Gardner, Sanuana Rodriguez, Virginia Delamani Akintola, and Marcelin Ostendorp. These scholars do an amazing job of remixing, building, and extending theory, drawing on critical race theory, Black feminist theories, critical media literacies, and intersectionality. These frameworks provide analytical lenses to build meaning with and alongside youth and communities of color. The section's so important because it's grounded in lived experiences. Scholar authors in this section draw on autoethnography and self-study, which brings their experiences into the work and provide important understanding of racial experiences as women of color, as Black scholars, and as people navigating primarily white institutions. Theory in this section is grounded in experience, reflection, alongside our experiences from our past, present, and future. So in these chapters, we learn about systemic inequality and oppression, but the chapters also illuminate resistance, resilience, joy, and hope, Black joy, community, and agency. And I'll turn it over to Marva.
Hi, I'm Dr. Marva Capello. I am a literacy professor of literacy education, and the director of the Center for Visual Literacies at San Diego State University. I'm going to talk to you about the second section of our book, which is called Understanding Methods and Techniques for Critical Visual Analysis. We invite readers to think differently about how we analyze visual multimodal artifacts in educational research. So traditionally, visual analysis is focused on elements of design and layout and color, often grounded in semiotic theories. Now, while these approaches have helped us understand how images make meaning, they're no longer sufficient for the socio-political realities that we face today. A social semiotic view does remind us that meaning making is always situated and shaped by culture, identity, power, and ideology. Visual and multimodal texts are never neutral. They're layered with race, class, gender, ability, histories of oppression, and resilience. So in this section, we highlight researchers that move beyond description towards critical visual approach. This means not only interpreting the images, but challenging historic hegemonies and creating analytic processes that empower individuals and communities to reclaim their own ways of meaning making. There's no single right way, no method for this work. Instead, the chapters that follow offer varied, innovative approaches, and they're united by three shared commitments. So first, all of the methods are participant-centered. They resist colonial and white supremacist research traditions that separate the researcher from the research, from the participants. And instead, they invite shared meaning-making, collaboration, and co-analysis. Second, they foreground reflexivity. So researchers don't stand outside the data. Their identities, histories, and positionalities are part of the analytic process. And finally, these approaches push beyond surface interpretation. They're designed to uncover layered meanings, structured conditions, and a broader sociopolitical context shaping lived experiences. The chapters in this section include work by Emmanuel Anyate, Kojo Akarim, Catherine Cheng Stahl, and Haney Yoon, Vanessa Falcon Orta and her participant author colleagues from the United States Transborder region, as well as Kelly Wiseman, Vanessa Wilkins, and Hanam Tayagida. We hope that this section equips researchers with the tools not just to analyze images, but to engage them critically, collaboratively, and courageously in pursuit of racial and educational justice. Jennifer?
Thanks, Marva. Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Turner. I'm a professor in literacy education at the University of Maryland, and it's my pleasure to introduce the third section of our book, which is titled Advancing Critical Visual Praxis with Schools and Communities. Across informal and formal learning contexts, praxis serves as a powerful method for disrupting conventional hierarchies and binaries, opening new spaces for knowledge building and social transformation. More specifically, the chapters in this section represent critical visual praxis as theory and action, healing pedagogies, and visually just learning approaches for minoritized children and youth. The chapter authors in this section are doing incredible critical visual praxis work in P-12 schools, university classrooms, and artful community spaces, including museums. We'd like to thank the chapter authors and give them a little shout out. And those authors include Darielle Blevins, Naomi Ramirez, Grace Player, Stephanie Jones, Hannah Biles, Sarah Wide, Sarah D. Reed, and Mary Adu Gumphy. Today, we have invited two of our authors from this third section on critical visual praxis to share with us more about their work and their chapters. So we're excited to have with us today Dr. Angie Zapata, who is the author of the chapter, I Think They Both Have Power, Critical Slow Looking of Picture Books with Diverse Racial, Linguistic, and Cultural Representation. Angie is Associate Professor of Language and Literacies Education at the University of Missouri. She is the recipient of numerous research awards, including the Mid-Career Scholar Award from the National Council of Research in Language and Literacies, and the 2024 Outstanding English Elementary Educator Award from the National Council of the Teachers of English. Angie's newest book is so good. You gotta read it and get it if you haven't so far. But it's Deepening Student Engagement with Diverse Picture Books, Powerful Classroom Practices for Elementary Teachers. Dr. Reka Barton is also with us, and she's our second chapter author with the chapter titled Elevating Black Girlhood Through Visual Methodology, Arts-Based Research as a Lens for Seeing Black Girls. Reka is an assistant professor in literacy education at the University of Maryland, and she researches multilingualism and multiliteracies via critical multimodal methodologies. Reka is a former elementary teacher in dual language and urban classrooms. Her recent publications appear in leading academic journals, including Children's Literature and Education, the Journal of Language and Literacy Education, and Departures in Critical Qualitative Research. We're so excited to have both Reka and Angie with us today because we deeply admire their work and we're grateful for their beautiful contributions to our book. Our conversation today is a panel format where we will pose questions for Reka and Angie to answer. And so I'll just open it up and begin with this question. Can you both tell us a little bit more about yourself and the context that led you to this work?
I'll jump in. Well, hi everyone. Yes, my name is Angie Zapata. I'm an associate professor of language and literacy education here at the University of Missouri, and it's a thrill to be in conversation with these women in particular, and to gather in this way because they've held me up in ways more than they know, more than they know. It's wonderful. But the research work and the teaching that I'm engaged in is deeply personal for me as a first generation American, daughter of Peruvian immigrants who grew up bilingual in Texas, from my own life as a Latina, as a tia to biracial nieces and nephews, a longtime teacher in public school bilingual settings, and now a teacher educator and researcher. I'm driven. I really am driven to better understand how we can bring this what I call alegría, right? This translingual vibrancy to the classroom. And I've turned to picture books in particular with their rich visual and print narratives to as a pathway to enliven that alegría. And so that's been at the heart of my work, just deeply personal research work that's again gotten so much momentum in my partnerships in the classroom with teachers, students, and their families.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. First of all, it's an honor to join this space with you all, people who I felt so supported by coming through my doctoral program and into my career. For me as well, this work is personal. I am a Black girl multilingual, and to be able to do research alongside other Black girl multilinguals is really special to me. This work came from my doctoral study, and it really was the work that I wanted to do. And I was in my program throughout those COVID years where there was a lot of you might want a plan B, or what if this doesn't work, or maybe virtual. And I knew I needed to be with the girls. I knew that my plan A was going to be my project that I was passionate about. And it was being able to allow Black girl multilinguals in elementary school to show me, not just tell me about their multilingual lived experiences. So I'm really proud of this work. And every time I get to talk about it or go back to it or look at the photographs that the girls created, it really brings me joy.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it back with this question. So we're wondering if you could tell us about what drew you to participate in our 2022 AERA conference, where we all gathered together to talk about critical visual methods for racial justice.
I think about that question, Enrique, you probably have the same response. Anytime Jen, Marva, and Angela say, hey, you go, yeah, I want to do that with you all. And because the opportunity to be together in that way is not only, academically intense and wonderful, it's also just caring and loving and supportive. And we just need more of that every day. So in so many ways, I think what you all do to bring us consistently together again and again is such a model of women supporting women in academia and women supporting scholars of color in academia towards a pathway to pushing the field. It's an incredible model. So that's always my first, like, yes, what can we do? Yes, we're there. But to add to that too is just any opportunity to be in conversation with great folks who you see pushing the field, folks who you admire. It's such an opportunity to grow your own thinking, nudge your own work. It's very easy to become siloed in your work and focused on your own ontologies and epistemology, your own readings. And so, I think that's part of the work. We have to push ourselves to be in conversations with folks who are doing things differently than you and help you nuance your own work. In particular, I think the opportunity to gather as a collective to, focus on critical visual methods was powerful for me because it was just so humbling and such a reminder of this work can look so many different ways. That intersection of different ontologies and epistemologies just left me in awe of all the realities and possibilities that are possible through multimodal racial justice work. And, whether it's a critical race, critical literacy, new materialism, Black feminist critical literacy, that intersection of so many ways of thinking and being and doing research for racial justice and multimodal research was, again, just invigorating for my own practice. And I'm always grateful for that work. And you don't feel alone. It's very easy in doing this work to feel, to question, am I going the right way? Am I thinking a little too outside the box, if that's possible? And to gather again in this kind of collective solidarity just was really reaffirming. And I'll forever appreciate that opportunity to be together.
I echo so many of those same sentiments, and it actually is really exciting to think back. It seems like forever ago now that we had that conference, but that was my last year of my program, and it was sort of the transition period for me. So I had a wonderful advisor, Dr. Marva Capello. So I knew about the conference. It sounds so exciting. You get to do this work with your academic besties. I'm so excited. How can I support? And then at some point, I was actually invited to be a part of the conference. And it felt like, Mommy, I made it. Like, I'm here, like with these amazing scholars, and to be able to spend that time in that small group to really see what it can look like, and that I don't have to stop dreaming and creating after my program, that I can walk into the next phase of my career still doing this work. I remember some of those presentations that have jump started one of the projects that I'm currently working on. I now have collaborators from that group. So it's just really exciting to know that there's so many of us who really believe in this. I think back to that as one of the moments that really grounded what I do and how I do it and who else I can look at who's doing this work.
Thank you both. Both of your chapters center young children as capable, knowing individuals whose visual literacies deserve to be honored. What does that look like when young children are positioned as experts and co-creators of knowledge through critical visual methodologies?
I can start. For me, kids can do so much more than many adults give them credit for. I think many of us feel the same way, that they are brilliant. They have genius. They have things to say. They want to be heard. They deserve to be centered. So there was no question that I wanted to talk to the kids. I wanted to do my research with them, beside them. And I think bringing in the visual just gave them another tool, another pathway, another language to speak to me about their experiences. And so after being an elementary school teacher for 10 years, I had no doubt that the students were capable. And of course, you learn so much. And I'm working alongside elementary schoolers, and they were pointing out things that I may have missed, or making me sit and think twice about something, or showing up in a way that just felt so good, not just for me, but for their collaborators, the other girls in the project. Watching community being made within the group of Black girl multilinguals was one of the most rewarding pieces as we did that. And their life, their language development, it deserves to be centered. There's such a lack of literature on Black multilingualism. And then when we disaggregate that to Black girls and their multilingual practices and experiences, I just felt that they needed to be centered. They needed to co-create. And to be able to have them not only take pictures, but print out the pictures, bring them back to them, have them use their pictures and be in groups as they told stories around their experiences, was really eye-opening.
Yeah, listening to you speak reminds me of the broader work on critical childhood perspectives, which positions us to recognize the autonomy, the agency, that creative intellectualism that young children have that's so often dismissed as you're, explaining, Reka. Critical visual literacies I found is just a really powerful pathway to support young children, youth, to tap into that existing agency, to leverage that knowing and experience in the classroom. I mean, I'm thinking about your question in particular, what does it look like? What does it look like when young children are doing that? And my question that comes to mind too is, what does it feel like? And I'm such a empathetic person, and when I step into a space and critical visual literacy practices are happening, I mean, you can't help but feel those affectual intensities that are there. There's so much engagement, excitement, momentum, movement, children layering stories on top of stories, each other's stories, collaborating that way, materials, bodies, sound, music, everything at the intersection of so much happening. And it's something that you feel, not just see. And, as a methodologist in the spaces, you're required to experience it to really to keep to the fidelity of what's unfolding there. You have to experience it. It's not something you can document in the afterwards or just look at the final outcome to interpret. You really have to be in that moment to appreciate the nuance and the incredible intricacies of what's happening there. So again, it's just watching young children engage and compose with visual text and make meaning from visual text. It really positions us to have to decenter that adult gaze, and do that work. And again, just so satisfying, and I just love it. I love stepping into those spaces.
Um, it's amazing and inspiring to be amongst all of you with your passion and your love for this work. So to just kind of think about this, for educators and researchers listening who want to engage in this work, what guidance would you offer about getting started with critical visual methodologies in their own contexts?
I can pop in, and again, keeping in line with this idea of critical childhood perspectives in conversation with critical visual, methodologies, be open to the ways children and youth are already engaging in what I call slow looking of visual text. They are consuming and creating visual text daily. And in starting into this work, if it's new, you might feel a deep responsibility to model and show what it would look like. But they have existing practices and experiences with being creators of visual text. So, what does it mean to just let that be your entry into this work? What are you taking that lens of what are your students already doing with visual text? And where are those spaces to invite them into conversations about interrogating power or understanding the deeper implications of those images, or to unpack the material processes around those images as well. I think there's just so much knowing and expertise that already exists among our students. How can just a simple attunement to that be the first step in kind of thinking about your classroom practice? And then, of course, my own bias, how can your classroom library be a visual library of the incredible racial, linguistic, ethnic, broader cultural representation in the classroom and beyond? What a wonderful first place to start, develop that stance as a critical picture book curator. So those are two things that come to mind.
For me, it's one, again, yes, being open. And I think one is also being grounded. And so I grounded this work in Black girlhood. And so making sure that I knew where I was situated from the pathways and lineages of Black feminism, understanding that lived experience holds its own knowledge, and then bringing in this visual component. I wanted these girls, much after Ruth Nicole Brown's examples, to be in control of this. And so, what does that look like? And also, what does that look like at an elementary age? And with my experience in the classroom, I had no qualms about working with young children, but I did have to think about, okay, what does that also come with? And so I think about the tools. And so every girl was handed a digital camera, and there was, I mean, we did a very simple, here's how to use it, but understanding that girls who were 6 to 10 years old may not have seen a digital camera that wasn't on a phone. And so even essentially, here's how to use this, but also not taking over. We did a little practice, and then it was, you can do this. If you need help, let me know. I think also remembering to keep it centered on them and back to like the adultism, the power dynamic. So, how do I show up in support of the work that they're creating, the photographs that they're creating, knowing, helping them remember that they're leading in these spaces. And so really being able to follow their lead, to make sure there was time for them to sit and pause and think, that nothing felt rushed or it needed to look a certain way. I'm also a huge proponent of them being able to keep what they create. And so we printed out doubles for all of the photos so that every girl not only offered and created photographs that ended up being part of my data set, but they also ended up having photos that they created about their lived experiences that they could take home and continue the conversations with their loved ones and their friends. And I think to also remember that their Black girlhood, their linguistic genius exists outside of the classroom. And I made sure that the girls had a chance to express that. So they borrowed the cameras and they took pictures at school, at home, in different places in their communities and neighborhoods. And that really helped me see them more fully.
Thank you so much, Angie and Reka, for this rich and generative conversation. Your work reminds us why critical visual methods matter, not just as research tools, but acts of justice, care, and solidarity with the young people and communities we serve. And we just want to thank the AERA Writing and Literacy SIG for hosting us, and to everyone who joins us and listens to us in our future. We hope that this conversation among all of us sparks new questions and new collaborations and new ways of seeing your own work and thinking about literacy in general. The book, Critical Visual Methods to Advance Racial Justice in Educational Research, is available now, and we'd love it to be a resource in a continuing conversation. We are grateful to all of you. Thank you.